Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome back to the UCSI Radio. Today we are diving into a complex and fascinating topic, intermarriage in India and South Africa. By intermarriage, we mean marriages that cross traditional social boundaries, whether those are defined by caste or religion in India or by race in the context of South Africa. I'm Eddie, your host, and I'm joined by my colleagues, both Owen and also Wenjie. We will explore the historical background of intermarriages in both societies, the societal stigma and challenges that these couples might face, cultural and media representations, policy and legal developments, real examples and reforms, and finally some forward-looking strategies and reflections. This is an academic discussion, but we'll keep it a conversational one. Owen and Wenjie, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Eddie. I'm excited to discuss this. The topic of intermarriage is rich for academic inquiry. It touches on how societies manage diversity at the most intimate level. By comparing India and South Africa, we can learn how different kinds of social divisions, caste and religion in India versus race in South Africa affect personal relationships and choices.
Thanks, Andy. Happy to be here. This is a really interesting topic. Love is personal, but society makes it complicated.
Okay, let's start with some historical context first. Since history shaped present attitudes, in India for centuries, social norms strongly dictated by marrying within one's own community, usually within the same caste or religion. So, marrying outside your caste was often considered taboo and could lead to social ostracism. Likewise, historically there were strong barriers to Hindus and also Muslim intermarrying. After India gained their independence in 1947, the constitution outlawed caste discrimination, and reformers like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar urged intercaste marriages as a way to break down caste barriers. The Special Marriage Act of 1954 was even enacted to allow interfaith marriages without religious conversion. Still, despite these progressive laws, relatively few people in the decades after independence actually married outside their caste or religion because traditional attitudes remain very powerful.
So even though the law changed, people thinking didn't, and that must have been hard for the couple.
Exactly. Legal equality existed on only the paper, but social norms kept most marriages within the same group. Now, in South Africa, the historical situation was almost the opposite in terms of the roles of the state. Under the apartheid regime, from 1948 onwards, the government enforced racial separation with harsh law. Interracial marriages was especially banned by the Prohibition of Marriages Act of 1949. Any sexual or marital relationship across racial lines, say between a white and a black South African, was a criminal offense under apartheid law. Some couples in love had to flee the country to marry abroad and live together in secret, because if they were discovered, they faced police harassment and even jail. This legal ban stayed in force for decades. It was only in 1985 that the apartheid government finally repealed the Mixed Marriages Act, and of course, once apartheid ended in the early 1990s, all such racist laws was dismantled, and South Africa's new constitution firmly established equality, including the freedom to marry who you choose.
Wow, this is crazy. People couldn't even marry the person they loved. That must have been really tough.
It really was. So we have a stark contrast. In South Africa, the government itself once forbade intermarriage, whereas in post-independence India, the government allowed and even legally facilitated inter-community marriages. But it was the society that often forbade it informally. In both places, there were very powerful deterrents to intermarriages. just of different kinds, like state enforced versus socially enforced.
Oh, so in one's place, the law stopped people, in the other, society did. Either way, couples had the hard time.
You're right. Now, given that background, let's talk about the societal stigma and challenges that intermarried couples face today. You have seen how each society historically discouraged this relationship. Does that persist? Starting with India, even today, intercaste or interreligious marriages are quite rare in India, and couples who pursue them often encounter significant opposition. Usually, the first hurdle is the family. Parents and relatives frequently disapprove of a match that crosses caste or religion line. It's not uncommon for families to vehemently pressure the couple to break it off. In extreme cases, there have been horrified incidents of violence, which is the honor killings, where one of both or the partners are murdered by their own relatives or community members because of the relationship was seen as bringing shame. We hear news from time to time of young couples being attacked or killed for defying caste norms or religious expectation. Even when violence doesn't occur, such couple might face threats, intimidation, or being disowned by their own family. Many end up fleeing their hometown to marry quietly in another city. Some seek protection from the police and support from NGOs that specifically help interfaith or intercaste couples.
Wow, this sounds really crazy. Oh, I can imagine beginning in the situation just for love. They have to run away.
It can be. In recent years, interfaith couples in India have even faced additional hostility due to a conspiracy theory nicknamed Love Jihad, which falsely claims that one religious community is seducing of another faith as a strategy. This kind of rhetoric has led vigilante groups and even some local authorities to cast suspicions on genuine interfaith relationship. A few states have passed new laws to prevent forced religious conversion in marriage, particularly for Hindu men who marrying another Muslim woman. But these laws have sometimes been misused to harass consenting interfaith couples. So an interfaith couple today might not only fear social stigma but also potential legal hurdles or public harassment spurred by that narrative.
This is terrible. So, even when they follow the law, people still make trouble for them.
Indeed, Wenjie, the stigma in India operates at multiple levels. Even if there isn't outright violence, intermarried couples often encounter daily disapproval or social coldness. They might hear constant insensitive remarks like intrusive questions like about what religion their children will be, or pressure for one spouse to convert to the other's faith. The stress on family relations is intense. Imagine planning your wedding and realizing some of your close family members refuse to attend or even speak to you, all because they reject your partner's community. That's a reality many of these couples face, and it's emotionally devastating.
That must be so painful. Your own family not accepting your marriage. That is really, really sad.
Exactly. It takes a lot of courage and resilience for couples to stand up to that kind of pressure. Now, how about South Africa? Today, the legal barriers are gone, but are there social challenges for interracial couples in South Africa?
It's a very good question, Eddie. South Africa has certainly made enormous progress since the days of apartheid, but some social biases linger. The good news is that younger generations who grew up after apartheid tend to be quite open-minded about interracial friendships and dating. In big cities, it's increasingly common to see interracial couples, and it's usually no big deal. However, old attitudes haven't vanished entirely. In some families, perhaps among the older generation, you might still find quiet disapproval if, say, a white family's daughter brings home a black boyfriend, or vice versa. They might not forbid it outright the way it was once forbidden by law, but there could be subtle resistance or discomfort. Additionally, societal segregation from apartheid legacy means that while public spaces are integrated, people's social circles can still be somewhat divided by race or community, especially outside the more cosmopolitan areas. An interracial couple working in a very conservative or rural area might occasionally get stares or even an ignorant comment. It's not the norm everywhere, but it happens enough to remind us that some prejudices are still under the surface.
So it is much better now, but not perfect. Some people still don't like it.
Yes, there are still prejudices under the surface.
Oh, not surprising after that history change take time.
Yeah, exactly. Surveys in South Africa have found that only around half of people said they would fully approve of a close relative marrying someone of another race. Now, half support is a lot better than decades ago when almost no one would. So attitudes have been improving. But it also means a substantial portion of people are still uncomfortable with the idea. That shows how changing social mindsets can lag behind legal or formal changes. In other words, the law changed faster than people's hearts in some cases.
Law changes faster than mad. That makes sense. Some people need time to accept new thing.
Yes, Wenjie, on a personal level, interracial couples may still navigate certain sensitivities. They might worry about how each other's extended families will accept their marriage, or how to blend different cultural traditions in things like wedding or raising children. Even if no one voices outright racism, there can be cultural misunderstanding to work through. So, while they don't usually face the kind of mortal danger that some Indian couples do, interracial couples in South Africa might still deal with subtle forms of stress or having to educate others around them.
So it is not just black and white, they are culture different too.
Yes, you're right. It's not purely a black and white issue or of racism, it's also the culture and familiarity. But overall, we should note that the things are improving. Younger South Africans that tend to be more accepting, and social interaction between races is much more common now than it was in the past, which is gradually eroding these old attitudes. Now, moving on to cultural and media representation, how have these societal depict how have these societies depict intermarriage in movies, televisions, or other media? Popular culture that reflect societal attitudes, but it can also challenge and shape them. Let's talk about India first. Owen, how do India films or media portray intercaste or interfaith relationship?
Well, Eddie, India popular media has definitely grappled with the theme, sometimes very directly. For example, Bollywood, for instance, has produced quite a few films where the drama revolves around an inter-community romance. Take the film Sayrate, and in Marathi, it's about a love affair between a low-caste young man and an upper-caste young woman. It became famous for its unflinching portrayal of the violent backlash they face. It really held a mirror to the caste prejudices that can still lead to tragedy. On the other hand, there are films with more optimistic takeaways. Two States, for example, is a Hindi film about a Punjabi boy and a Tamil girl, so different ethnic, cultural backgrounds within India, who fell in love. The story humorously navigates the prejudices and cultural clashes between their family, but ends with everyone coming around and accept the marriage. That kind of portrayal sends the message that love can indeed overcome barriers after some effort. There have also been movies like Bombay, which tackled a very sensitive topic, a Hindu-Muslim marriage, set against the drop-off of rare religious riots. It was quite bold in promoting commercial harmony. On television, you will occasionally see storylines about interfaith couples in soap operas or web series, and some ads have shown mixed families too. These representations can be influential. They at least start conversations among audience about these issues.
So, movies show both the good and the bad side. Some show the problem and some show the hope. That is important.
Exactly. Sometimes filmmakers use art to provoke thought and try to change the society. It's worth noting that beyond fictional media, there are real public figures in India who have also arguably shifted the perceptions. Many famous Bollywood stars or public personalities themselves are in or interfaith marriages. For example, Hindu-Muslim couples among the celebrities. These real-life couples are often celebrated by their fans, which subtly challenges the notion that such unions are unacceptable. Of course, there are still hardliners who disapprove loudly. We sometimes see trolls attacking celebrity couples on social media for being interfaith, but largely the public celebrates them. So, media and celebrity culture have provided both idealized stories and real examples that can influence public sentiment.
That is interesting. So when famous people marry outside their group, it helps others see it is as normal.
Yes, that's true. As what about South Africa media?
Well, Eddie, in post-apartheid South Africa, media and advertising have generally embraced the idea of rainbow nation. It's not unusual now to say, a television commercial featuring an interracial couple or a mixed family, presented in a completely ordinary matter-of-fact way that normalizes the image of different races living together as family. South Africa films and TV shows that included interracial relationship storylines as well, though perhaps less frequently than India has tackled interreligious ones, likely because the media productions here is smaller. Still, the presentation is there and growing. A powerful cultural voice is also the comedy scene. One example is Trevor Noah, the South Africa comedian and also the former host of The Daily Show in the US. Trevor Noah was born to a black mother and a white father during apartheid, and he often jokes that he was born a crime because his parents' relationship was illegal at the time of his birth. Through humor, he highlights both the absurdity of the old laws and the progress since then. When a comedian of his stature talks about being a child of an interracial couple and gets audience to laugh and reflect, it does help normalize the idea that love and family can transcend race.
Comedy is a great way to make people think. When people laugh, maybe they also start to change their minds.
It can be. Comedy and storytelling can broach sensitive issue in a way that it can help the audience to lower their defense and also prompt reflection. Another aspect is how people react to these media portrayals. In India, when the media push boundaries, sometimes there is a strong backlash. A notable recent case is by a jewelry company at a commercial depicting a harmonious interfaith family, a Hindu woman and her Muslim mother-in-law in the end, celebrating together. It was meant to be heartwarming, but it triggered such a storm of abuse from a small segment of the public that the company actually pulled the ad off the air out of fear. The fact that an ad had to be withdrawn under pressure shows that some people are still very sensitive and opposed to normalizing interfaith marriages. In South Africa, by contrast, media depictions of mixed couples generally haven't caused much controversy in recent years, as overtly racist objections are largely discredited in public. So, media has been a tool for normalization in both places, but it can also become a battleground that reflects the remaining divisions.
That's a big difference. In one place, people fight against it, and in other, most people just accept it.
It is, Wenjie. It emphasizes how broader political and also social climate can influence personal freedom and representation. In India, content about intermarriages can still hit a raw nerve among some groups, whereas in South Africa, the openly opposing such representation will be roundly criticized. Now, let's discuss the policy and also legal developments. We know that broad legal history, like for example, India has long allowed intermarriages in law. South Africa have banned and then allowed it again. But what's happening recently on the policy front? Are there legal reforms or government actions addressing intermarriages issue in either country? Starting with India. Actually, in India, it was legally, and it is legally now also. As we said, intercaste and interfaith marriages are permitted. The Special Marriage Act of 1954 provides a civil marriages route for couples who don't want or can't have a religious ceremony. However, there are still some bureaucratic provision in the law that pose challenges. For example, the Act requires a 30-day public notice of the intended marriage at the local registry. That might sound routine, but in practice, it can alert hostile family members or even extremist groups about the couple's plans, leading to interference. Many interfaith couples feel this requirement endanger their privacy and safety. They have been called to amend it, but as of now, it's still on the books. On the supportive side, the Indian government and some state governments have actually tried to encourage intercaste marriages as a society policy. There are financial incentive schemes that reward couple, especially if one spouse is from a historically disadvantaged Dalit caste and the other is not, for marrying across caste lines. The idea is that to promote social integration, these programs are not huge in scale, but they send a message. On top of that, the courts in India have often been strong protectors of the right to marry whom you choose. The Supreme Court have repeatedly ruled that adults have the right to marry regardless of caste or religion, and it was directed police and authorities to ensure couples are not harmed. On the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, some state-level laws, those so-called anti-love jihad laws, have introduced new hurdles by requiring scrutiny of interfaith marriages. So, legally, it's a mixed picture. The constitutional and national legal framework support intermarriages, and there are even incentives and court protections. Yet, there are still procedural obstacles and new laws in some regions that can complicate things for interfaith couples.
So the law say yes, but in real life it's still hard. This is confusing.
Yes, it's a bit of a push-pull situation. Progressive move on one side and regressive move on another side. Meanwhile, in South Africa, after apartheid was dismantled, the legal framework became very open, and it has remained so. Since 1955, when the ban was lifted, there have been no restriction at all on intermarriages, on marriages between any two adults, regardless of their races. It's just as valid as any another. There is no special procedure required for different race couple beyond the standard of marriage process. The post-apartheid constitution explicitly forbids racial discrimination, so any attempt to discriminate against an interracial couple, say a marriage officer or a venue refusing to host them because of their race, would be illegal. In terms of policy, the government doesn't specifically promote interracial marriages. That would be seen as social engineering, but it does promote policies that encourage interaction and equality among all races, like integrated schooling, housing integration efforts, affirmative action in workplace. The assumption is that as the playing field evens and people mix more freely, interracial relationships will naturally increase. And in fact, the data shows that they have been increasing slowly. So legally, South Africa's focus has been to ensure equality and then let personal freedom take it from here.
So in South Africa, the law is clean and people can decide for themselves. That sounds much simpler.
Yes, Wenjie, right. In South Africa nowadays, the challenge isn't any legal barrier as it was in the past. It's more about continuing to heal social divisions. The government doesn't need new marriage laws, but it does need to keep supporting conditions that encourage different communities to interact. Over the decades since apartheid, as workplaces, universities, and neighborhoods became more integrated, people started forming new friendships and romances across racial lines. This trend will likely continue. The government just needs to maintain strong anti-discrimination enforcement and promote equality in all spheres, so that people meet as equals. The rest follows naturally.
So freedom plus integration equals more mixing. That makes sense.
That's true. Legal freedom combined with genuine social integration will naturally yield more integral marriages over time. Now, to ground this discussion, let's look at a few real examples and recent developments that illustrate how this issue play out. Perhaps we can share one or two notable cases from each country. Owen, could you give an example from India that highlights the challenges or changes happening?
Certainly. One very stark example from India was a case a few years ago in the state of Haryana, where a young man and a woman married against the wishes of their family. They were from different castes. In retaliation, the woman's relatives brutally murdered the couple in what was clearly an honor killing. It was a shocking crime that made national headlines. The good news is that the Indian courts responded firmly. Several of the perpetrators were convicted and given life prison sentences. That case underscored both the extreme dangers some couples still face and the determination of the legal system to punish such acts. On a more hopeful note, we have also seen stories of gradual changes. There have been instances of interfaith or intercaste couples who initially faced intense family opposition but managed, over time, to reconcile with their families. I recall a story about Hindu-Muslim pair in South Africa who married without their parents' approval. At first, they were rejected by both sides, but after a couple of years, their family slowly began speaking to them again, and eventually accepted the marriage, especially after their grandchildren came into the picture. The media highlighted that as an example of hearts changing. It shows that while prejudices can run deep, but it's not immutable. Sometimes personal bonds and time can convince families to embrace the couple.
That's so sad, but also hopeful. Some family never change, but others do.
They are. They show both the harsh reality and also the potential for progress. How about South Africa? Any examples or trends to mention here, Owen?
Yes, Eddie, we have got good examples. In South Africa, one interesting way to gauge change is to listen to the stories of those who lived through the transition. Some of the first interracial couples who married legally right after the 1985 repeal have shared their experiences publicly. They often describe how difficult it was at first. They might have faced harassment from neighbors or lost friends who couldn't accept their relationship. But many of them also say that as time passed, things improved greatly. The children grew up in a different era and faced far less stigma about having parents of different races. Around the 30th anniversary of the repeal in 2015, media outlets interviewed some of these couples, and they noted how much more accepting society had become. There was also a touching story of an elderly black-white couple who had been together throughout apartheid years and finally married officially once it became legal. Their marriage was celebrated as a triumph of love over an unjust service system. On the flip side, we do still hear the occasional racist incident. For example, an interracial couple being verbally harassed by a stranger. But what stands out is the public reaction. When such incidents surface, there is usually widespread public condemnation of the harasser and support for the couple. That kind of reaction shows how far society attitudes have progressed. Most South Africans today see interracial couples as a normal part of the social fabric, and they won't tolerate those old racist behaviors.
That's really inspiring. So things have changed a lot, but sometimes problems still happen.
It is heartening, and it underscores that changes can thus happen. India's example shows that there is a movement, though it may be slow or met with resistance, and South Africa, on the other hand, examples show a remarkably transformation within a few decades. So, with all this in mind, let's turn to the future. What strategies or changes could help improve acceptance of intermarriages in these contexts? What can be done to reduce stigma and make it easier for this couple? Owen, maybe you can start with some thought on this.
Yes. One key strategy in both countries is education and increased social interaction. Prejudice often surfaces when people have little personal exposure to those who are different. If young people study, work, and socialize with peers from different communities, they are more likely to form friendships across those lines. In India, this means fostering environments, schools, colleagues, workplaces, where caste and religion don't segregate people as much. Encouraging extracurricular programs or community activities that mix youngs from diverse backgrounds can also build understanding. On the legal side, India could certainly simplify the Special Marriage Act procedures to make it safer for interfaith couples to marry without fear, and the authorities must continue to enforce laws against honor violence or harassment. So, to send a clear signal that such intimidation won't be tolerated. In its essence, the government and civil society in India can work together to create a more secure and accepting atmosphere, to protect couples with the law and promote a culture of tolerance through education and public messaging.
So people need to meet and understanding each other more. If they grow up together, maybe they won't see that this marriage as a problem.
Yes, Wenjie, exactly. Cultural efforts are crucial as well. Median representations that normalize inter-community couples can gradually shift public perceptions. We've already discussed now how films and TV can influence attitudes, so continuing to include intercaste and interracial love stories in popular media will help. Public figures, celebrities, influencers, even local community leaders speaking up in support of such marriages can also reduce stigma. In India, for instance, if more religious leaders openly blessed interfaith unions, or if popular TV series showed a happy intercaste family, that could change some viewers' mindset. Beyond the medium, on-the-ground initiatives like inter-community dialogues or Meet Your Neighbor programs can humanize groups to each other. People often change their views when they actually get to know someone from the other group personally. In South Africa, the groundwork is largely laid, but continuing anti-prejudice campaigns and highlighting positive mixed family stories in the medium can reinforce the acceptance. Essentially, cultural and community action can complement legal measures by addressing the heart and mind.
Yeah, seeing real life expansion make a bigger difference. If people see happy intermarried couple around them, they might change their opinion.
How about South Africa specifically?
Yet, South Africa largely needs to continue on its current path, deepening social integration and equality. Legally, everything is in place. The work is mostly social. This means tackling any lingering segregation or equality that keeps different racial groups apart. The more integrated neighborhoods and schools become, and the more equal people are socio-economically, the more nature it will be for friendships and romances from across racial lines. In practices, this involves continuing to improve education and job opportunities for historically disadvantaged communities, so that race and class aren't so correlated and people of different backgrounds mixed more. It also involves steadfastly countering any racist rhetoric and keeping alive the value of unity and reconciliation that leaders like Nelson Mandela championed. Given that younger South Africans are already much more open than their elders, a lot of it is a generally shift. So maintaining policies and a social environment that encourage mixing and mutual respect will allow that new generation to lead the way. In short, keeping integrating, keep upholding equality, and over time, intermarriage will keep gaining acceptance as just another ordinary part of life.
So young people are already more open. If things keep going this way, maybe in the future, no one will care about race and caste in marriage.
That might be true. I would like to add a broader reflection. Social scientists sometimes describe intermarriage as a barometer of social integration. If a lot of people are intermarrying, it indicates that divisions between groups have diminished significantly. By that measure, both India and South Africa have more progress to make. India, especially, given how rare intercaste or interfaith marriages still are, with only 5.8% of Indian they marry to another people from another caste, and South Africa too. Though it is further along, but I'm cautiously optimistic for both in the long run. South Africa directions has been consistently towards more openness since apartheid ended, and in India, although there are fierce debates and even backlash right now, the fact that these issues are being discussed so much and that some families are slowly coming around, as we noted, suggests that changes is happening, even if gradually. Over time, as more Indians live in urban areas, get higher education, and interact with people of different background, and as the older generation with stricter views eventually pass on, acceptance of intermarriages is likely to grow. It might take a generation or two, but I do think that trend will be toward greater freedom in terms of personal life. Perhaps one day, marrying outside your regions or caste in India won't be such a big deal socially, just as marrying outside your race in South Africa has become increasingly normal for many. The hope is that eventually we won't even need a special term like interfaith or interracial marriage. It will just be marriage.
Yeah, that could be great. Just marriage, no labels. People should be able to marry whoever they love.
That's a beautiful way to put it, Wenjie. Ultimately, promoting open mindedness and empathy is at the heart of it. If people can learn to see each other beyond labels, seeing the person rather than the caste or race, then a lot of the stigma would melt away. Encouraging that kind of perspective is something educators, leaders, and we as peers can all contribute to. Both countries can continue working towards that ideal through educational curricula that emphasize unity, through celebrations of diversity, and by honoring those who cross the boundaries rather than shaming them. And, as we have noted, when couples themselves bravely go against the grain, they often become the agents of change, showing others that it's possible and that the sky doesn't fall.
I share that hope. We can already see it happening in many instances. Every time an intercaste couple in India manages to live happily, or an interracial couple in South Africa builds a life together, they set an example for everyone around them. They prove in their own circle that such a marriage can work. When their neighbors or colleagues see that, it challenges whatever prejudice these observers might have unconsciously held. Each such marriage probably changes a few minds in that immediate community. It's incremental, but over years and decades, those increments add up to rare social shifts.
Yeah, every carb is broke, the norm makes it easy for the next one. It is like a chain reaction.
Exactly. Each of those marriages chips away at prejudice and fear of the others. So, tackling the stigma around intermarriages really requires a multifaceted approach. Supportive laws, enlightened policies, positive cultural representation, and encourages individuals willing to lead by example. Change won't happen overnight, but it is happening. And as scholars and observers, it's inspiring to watch how India and also South Africa each navigate these changes in their own contexts. Thank you, Owen and Wenjie, for sharing your insights throughout this conversation.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Wenjie. It's been a pleasure to discuss these issues.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this talking. Learned a lot too.
And thanks to everyone for listening. We hope our dialogue should shed some light on the challenges and the progress in intermarriage, and perhaps even offer a bit of optimism about the direction of social change. Until next time, take care everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our radio.
You.